Hola estudiantes, soy Maestra Chelsea y estoy súper emocionada. I'm really excited because today we're going to dive into one of my absolute favorite parts of learning Spanish. I will preface, not everybody loves this next element of learning Spanish because they can find it to be a lot of work or a bit tedious or too much grammar. But I am going to challenge you to really, really flip the lens on that. So maybe you're wondering, what is she talking about? ¿De qué está hablando esta mujer? I'm talking about verb conjugations, mis amigos, mis amigas, mis amigues. So we are finally going to learn how to conjugate verbs. For now, we're going to start off with regular verbs and the present indicative tense. And I'll explain a little bit more what that even means in the video as well as in your workbook. But what I'm talking about is being able to say things like, so you have a verb, right? Like tomar, to take, or also tomar can mean to drink. So you can say, okay, tomar, but what if I want to say I drink? Well, once you conjugate a verb, you can say yo tomo. Or what if I want to say she drinks? Well, if you know how to conjugate a verb, you would know that it's ella toma. So we're going to learn how to do these conjugations for all of our regular AR, ER, and ER verbs in the present indicative tense. Now, there are going to be times where you feel like, oh my gosh, this is so confusing. There's so many different conjugations. Tranquilos, tranquilas, tranquiles. Todo bien. This is part of the process. You are going to have to practice. You're going to have to drill. I used to spend time, like hours, just writing in my notebook, breaking down conjugations. So prepare yourself to work hard, but also for this to unlock an entire new world, because now you can express yourself and create full sentences with subjects, with verbs, with adjectives. And I'm really excited for you because you're going to feel a complete shift in your ability to express yourself by the end of this lección. And we're going to keep looking at this throughout the rest of our lecciones in Básico 1. And this is going to be fundamental. Every level, every time you progress in your Spanish language learning, verb conjugations and different verb tenses are going to be a huge part because so much of the language revolves around that. So fasten your seatbelts, get ready, have energy, don't get frustrated, and let's dive in to verb conjugations in the present indicative tense. Vamos.
Muy bien, estudiantes, bienvenidos y bienvenidas a nuestra lección Yo como mango. In Spanish, we have rules on how to conjugate verbs depending on the verb tense, the mood, and the subject pronoun. We will learn in today's lesson how to conjugate verbs in the present tense indicative. And soon you'll be able to describe events and actions going on during the present time, talk about things you can do and that others can do, talk about your daily routines, and have basic everyday conversations. For example, you'll be able to say things like, Yo hablo inglés. Or yo bailo salsa. Or finally, él come mango en la mañana. So look how all of a sudden your Spanish vocabulary is going to be widely expanded once you can utilize verbs. Excelente. So in this class, we're only going to take a look at verbos regulares, regular verbs. What's a regular verb? A regular verb is a verb that follows the established rules of the conjugations, which we're going to see in just a moment. Irregular verbs, or verbos irregulares, are verbs that deviate in some way or another from the standard rules of conjugations. You will start seeing irregular verbs later in this course, but in today's lesson, we are just going to take a look at regular verbs in the present tense. Before we get into conjugations, though, we have to talk about the difference between a conjugated verb and a verb in its infinitive state, or as we call it in Spanish, el estado infinitivo. Verbs in the infinitive state, or the estado infinitivo, are not conjugated, and so they don't belong or go along with any particular subject pronoun. So a verb like bailar in English would translate to dance, right? So there's no subject. We don't know who dances. We don't know anything about who dances, where they dance, when they dance. We just know it's the word that means to dance. Bailar is to dance. And let's look at, for example, the verb comer, which is to eat. So it's in the infinitive state. There's no specific subject for which the verb is conjugated. Okay? So we're going to look right now at a list of verbs in their infinitive states. And we classify or divide our verbs in Spanish into 3 categories: AR, ER, and IR. So this is going to be useful because once you learn the conjugations for AR, any AR regular verb is going to be conjugated in the same way. So that means once you learn how to conjugate the verb hablar, you will know how to conjugate any other regular AR verb. It's pretty cool because now you can start practicing and really expanding your vocabulary. So we're going to see a series of videos as we learn and go over a couple verbs and their infinitive states. So please enjoy these videos and work on repeating the verb out loud as well as you see the image on your screen.
Trabajar. Correr. Aplaudir. Bucear. Vender. Escribir. Cenar. Aprender. Vivir.
So now that we've looked at a few useful verbs and their infinitive states, let's get into the conjugations of these verbs so you can start expressing what you and other people are doing. We have divided the regular verbs according to their endings, and this is for a reason, right? So to understand that, we are going to review what we know about regular verbs. We know that regular verbs follow the established rules of conjugations. But what are the rules? Well, it's actually a lot simpler than you think. When conjugating verbs that end in AR, ER, or IR, which you might hear referred to in English as AR, ER, and IR verbs, the rule says that the root will not change throughout the conjugation of the verb. What will change is the ending of the verb. So the root, let's look at the verb hablar, will not change. The root is HABL. And then ar, the ending, is the part that changes, okay? So our beginning doesn't change. It's the ending part that changes, and that is how we know who the subject is, etc. So how does the ending change when conjugated? Well, let's take a look. What we're going to need to know are also our subject pronouns. So now on your screen, you can see here our subject pronouns on the left, and on the top, we have a column for AR, a column for ER, and a column for IR verbs, okay? So really quickly, I want you to repeat after me. I'm going to say the subject pronoun. I want you to repeat, and I'm going to remind you, just in case you've forgotten, what this means in English. So our first one is yo. Muy bien. So this is I, also known as the first person singular. Next we have tú. So this would be you, informal, and this is the second person singular. We also have vos. Muy bien, repeat. Vos, which is also an informal version of the second person singular. And then we have usted. One more time. Usted. And that is the formal version of the second person singular. Then we have él, which is he, or ella, which is she. And this is the third person singular. And if you're wanting to utilize inclusive language, you might hear the word ella, which is a gender neutral. So él, ella, ella are third person singular. Now let's move on to our plurals. For our first person plural, we have nosotros and nosotras, as well as the inclusive language option, nosotres. And this means we. Then we have vosotros, vosotras, or vosotres, which mean y'all. So talking to you, the second person plural. But remember, vosotros, vosotras, y vosotres is only used in Spain. In Latin America, when we want to say, hey, you all, talk in the second person plural, we use the word ustedes. Ustedes. Muy bien. And finally, for the third person plural, to say things like them or they, those people, we can say ellos or ellas, or for gender inclusivity, ellas. Muy bien. So we've seen our subject pronouns. Why is it so important to review these subject pronouns? Because the subject pronoun is what's going to determine how you conjugate the verb. All right, let's look at our verbos ARs, okay? If you look on your chart, you see yo, and then the ending is o. So let's look at the verb hablar, since we've talked about that before. So what's the root of hablar? If you said H-A-B-L, you are correct. The root of hablar is H-A-B-L. So for the yo, what it says is we basically take off the AR and replace it with an O. So we say yo hablo. And tú hablas. Vos hablas. And remember, vos is not taught in a lot of Spanish classes. However, it is highly used in lots of Latin American countries. We use it a ton here in Guatemala. It's used heavily in Argentina, in Colombia, and many other places. And it's almost never taught in any Spanish courses. I've never seen it instructed in a university or a college, high school Spanish course. So we wanted to kind of shed light on how much this actually is used. But if you are feeling overwhelmed, you don't have to necessarily know both. It's colloquial, used in certain countries for usually like informality, close friendships, etc. So let's just review. Yo hablo. Tú hablas. Vos hablas. Él habla. Ella habla. Usted habla. Nosotros, what do you think it would be? Hablamos, muy bien. Vosotros habláis. Ustedes hablan. Ellos hablan. Ellas hablan. And for gender neutral, ellas hablan. So, an easy way to remember it is it goes o, as, a, amos, an. One more time. O, as, a, amos, an. Yo hablo, tú hablas. ¿Va? Vos hablas, él habla, ella habla, usted habla, nosotros hablamos, nosotras hablamos, vosotros habláis, vosotras habláis, ustedes hablan, ellos hablan, ellas hablan, and ellas hablan. Muy bien. So remember, you look at your verb, and an AR verb, you take off AR, you have your root, and then depending on the subject pronoun, your ending will change, and it will be o, as, if you are speaking with vos, a, amos, an. Muy bien. So now let's look at another verb, but an ER verb. So we're going to look at the ER verb comer. Okay, so here our endings are o, es, e, hemos, en. Okay? Yo como. Tú comes. Vos comes. Él come. Ella come. Usted come. Nosotros comemos. Nosotras comemos. Nosotres Inclusive language, comemos. Vosotros coméis. Vosotras coméis. And I'd like to note, I do not use vosotros in my speech, so I apologize if my vosotros is not perfect, but it's not something, like I said, that we use in Latin America. I'm just introducing it every now and then in case any of you are heading to Spain anytime soon, okay? And then finally, ustedes comen, ellos comen, y ellas comen, okay? And now let's look at an IR verb, un verbo IR, okay? And so the verb we're going to look at is subir, which means to climb on, or it can mean also to get into a car. Voy a subir al carro, subir, okay? And here our endings are very similar to AR verbs. It's O, S, with its voz it's is, imos, en. O, es, is, imos, en. Excelente. So let's look with subject pronouns. Yo subo. Tú subes. Vos subís. Usted sube. Él sube. Ella sube. Nosotros subimos. Nosotras subimos. Inclusive language, nosotres subimos. Muy bien. Vosotros subís. It's the same as vos. Vosotros subís. Vosotras subís. And then finally, ustedes suben. Ellos suben. Ellas suben. And if you wanted to do inclusive language, ellas suben. So, let's recap again our conjugations. For AR, we're going to say O, as, a, amos, an. For our AR, O, es, hemos, en. And for our IR, O, es, imos, en. Excelente. So now you've been introduced to the rules of conjugations, and I'm sure you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed. Honestly, at this point, the best thing you can do is practice. Practice writing out these conjugations and saying them out loud. It's going to take a few weeks of practice for your brain to start assimilating and always connecting the conjugation with the right subject pronoun, right? So that's the most important thing that you need to keep in mind. Who is my subject? Identify your subject first. Okay, my subject is me or I. What am I doing? I'm eating, so I say comer. So if I want to say I eat, I know that I take off the AR and I replace it with an O. So I say yo como. Yo como mango. ¿Y tú qué comes? Right? I'll leave you with that question. What do you eat? And think about how you can answer that for me.
Muy bien, estudiantes. So we have a separate video, which you can find after this one, where you can start putting your knowledge to the test. However, before you move on to that practice video, I highly recommend taking some time to review these conjugations in your workbook as well as on Quizlet. Maybe even leave a comment over in Discord, share with some of your classmates, reach out to your teachers, and get a little bit of practice under your belt before going on to the practice video that is linked to this exercise. So if you have any questions, you know you can always email us or drop us a comment in Discord, and we are here to help you. Otherwise, I hope that you have a great time studying and that you will head over to part 2 of this video soon to do that applied practice exercise. Muchas gracias y hasta pronto.